Chosen by God to rule, but which God? That was the question that plagued the Ahoms during the 15th century. In the years following Sudungpa's reign, the Ahoms tried to figure out where they stood. Were they loyal to the old religion, or did they want to become more compatible with their subjects? Throw in a Hindu religious revival being led by Sankardev and you had the makings of a strong eruption. Enter Suhungmung. Suhungmung was the first Ahom king to adopt a Hindu title, Swaragnarayana, which he will be referred to from here on in, and adopted the title Swargdeo, which was the Assamese translation of the Ahom kingly title Chao Pa, meaning Lord of the Heavens. Furthermore, Swaragnarayana was the king who, with the help of the Brahmins and the Thai priests, drew a connection between the Ahom's legendary progenitor Kunlung and the Hindu king of the gods Indra. A mythos developed that the Ahom dynasty descended from a marriage between Indra and Sayama, a low caste woman, which resulted in the creation of the Indravasma Kashratis, a lineage exclusively created for the dynasty. After centuries of existence, the Ahom kingdom finally decided to look outward under Swaragnarayana. This started with a campaign against the Aitonia Nagas, who rebelled shortly after he took the throne in 1497, and were eventually beaten and forced to accept Ahom overlordship in 1504. He then turned his eyes towards the Ahom's neighbours, starting with the Chutia kingdom. In 1512, Swaragnarayana annexed Panbari of Habung, an open challenge to the Chutia kingdom given Panbari's previous existence as a Chutia principality. The Chutia king duly responded, and in 1513 a war broke out between the two kingdoms. This war would last off and on for roughly 8 years, with various battles being fought and territory being lost and gained on both sides. This included Dibrugarh on the Ahom side and the lands on the banks of the Tipau River on the Chutia side. The war ended in 1522 when the Chutia king was succeeded by a weak and ineffective son-in-law who managed to anger various vassals of the Chutia kingdom, turning them to the Ahom side. Finally, at the Battle of Sadia, the power of the Chutias was broken, with both their king and his heir being slain in battle. Swaragnarayana decided against installing a puppet king and instead annexed the entire kingdom, creating the Sadiakoa Gohain and the Frisingmung Borgahain to rule over the newly acquired territory. Other offices were created to assist the two Gohains in administering the territory. Shortly after completing a progress of his new kingdom, Swaragnarayana found himself confronted with a new enemy. The Kachari kingdom to the south had watched the conquest of the Chutia kingdom in horror and had begun making plans to tackle the Ahoms. The Ahoms struck first, however, with an invasion occurring in 1526. The Ahoms managed to conquer as far as Marangi and held on to the territory even in the face of an attempted onslaught by Kachari warriors. This onslaught saw a counter-offensive led by Swaragnarayana himself, which saw the Ahoms arrive at the gates of the Kachari capital, Dimapur. Here, Swaragnarayana was faced with a choice: annex the kingdom or establish a puppet ruler. He decided to go for the second choice and installed the previous king's relative Detsung as the new king. Detsung, however, did not remain loyal and rebelled against the authority of the Ahoms. He was, however, killed at the Battle of Jangmarang, resulting in the Kacharis fleeing Dimapur for Maibong. Dimapur was annexed to the Ahom kingdom. Gunpowder and war. That's how the Muslim invasion of Assam that lasted from 1527 until 1535 can be summarised. The Muslims, having taken Bengal, now turned their eyes eastward and marched hard into the Ahom kingdom. They failed at first, being pushed back to the Burai River. They tried twice more and failed, and in this third expedition, the Ahoms captured cannons and guns, exposing themselves for the first time to gunpowder. Then, on the fourth occasion, the Muslims were led by Turbak, a Ghor commander, who saw it as his holy mission to take the Ahoms and make them Muslim. He invaded with a large army in 1532 and faced Swaragnarayana's son Suklen. Suklen was defeated and the Ahoms retreated to Sala. Turbak gained momentum and forced the Ahoms from Sala until a naval battle between the two enemies reversed course. This led to the two armies staring at one another across the Dikrai River. In a campaign known as the Dikrai Campaign, the Ahoms launched a series of successful counterattacks culminating in the Battle of Barali River, which drove the Muslims back into Bengal and killed Turbak. The Ahoms celebrated this victory for days. though their success was dulled somewhat by the death of the king's daughter Nang Mullah, who had taken command of part of the army after her husband's death. Those Muslim soldiers who were captured were soon put to work, becoming brass craftsmen and the like, and were the first Muslims to settle into the Ahom kingdom. It wasn't just war that Swaragnarayana engaged in. Fully aware that in order to reform his kingdom and increase its productivity, he needed more help, he created new ministerial positions. These were the Borpotra, who administered the area from the Dapla Hills and the Brahmaputra. This office's creation was opposed by two existing ministers, the Boragahain and the Borogahain, who refused to cede their influence over the Ahom militia or any territory. To rectify this, the king gave control of the non-Ahom militia to the Borpotra, and declared that no member of the Borpotra's family could marry a member of the royal family. The first Borpotra was the king's half-brother, who was supposedly raised by a Naga chief. The other two offices created were the Sadia Koagahain to look after the Sadia region taken from the Chutias, and the Marangi Koagahain to look after the Dhansiri river valley taken from the Kacharis. In the middle of his reign, Swaragnarayana held a meeting with Sankardev, an influential priest whose new form of Vaishnavism was growing in popularity in the kingdom and threatening the traditional Brahmin-led hierarchy. Such was the concern about Sankardev that the king summoned him to court and questioned him for hours. At the end, the king was reassured that Sankardev was not a threat and decided to let him go. This meeting would hold significance for later generations as it exposed the dynasty to the teachings of Sankardev, which would go on to both influence and later harm the dynasty. Swaragnarayana met his death in 1539 when he was assassinated by a servant as he slept, supposedly on the instigation of his oldest son Suklen, who was dissatisfied with something that the king had done. He was much mourned, and his legacy was to see an expansion of the Ahom kingdom for the first time since the 13th century, and the stability of the succession with each of his 4 sons having children, some of whom would come to sit the throne in due time.